The window pane was cold against my fingertips, my breath fogging in the crisp autumn night. I wasn't supposed to be here, crouched in the shadows of a stranger's backyard in suburban Virginia. But desperation has a way of rewriting the rules. My heart hammered as I jimmied the lock, praying the creak of the sash wouldn't betray me. I'm Elena Harper, 28, and I've never been good at following rules. Growing up in foster homes taught me to survive by bending them, and tonight was no exception. I'd heard whispers about this house empty, they said, but hiding something valuable. A stash of cash, maybe, or jewelry I could pawn to keep the lights on for another month. My diner job barely covered rent, and with my sister's medical bills piling up, I was out of options. So here I was breaking into a colonial-style home on Maple Street, hoping for a miracle. The lock gave way with a soft click, and I slipped inside, my sneakers silent on the hardwood. The air smelled of dust and lavender, like someone had tried to mask the emptiness. Moonlight spilled through the curtains, illuminating a living room frozen in time. A faded couch, a coffee table stacked with old magazines, a piano in the corner with keys yellowed by neglect. I moved toward the staircase, my pulse racing, when a beam of light sliced through the darkness. "Freeze!" a voice barked, sharp and commanding. My stomach dropped as I turned, hands raised, to face the silhouette of a police officer in the doorway. Her flashlight pinned me like a moth under glass. "What the hell are you doing in here?" I opened my mouth, scrambling for an excuse, but the words died when I saw her face. Officer Maya Torres, her name tag glinted in the light, wasn't what I expected. Mid-30s maybe, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that held a storm of their own. Her uniform was crisp, but there was something raw in her expression, something that didn't match the badge. "Two got lost," I stammered, knowing it was a pathetic lie. Her eyes narrowed and she stepped closer, the floor creaking under her boots. "Lost? In someone else's house at 2 a.m. Her voice was low, edged with suspicion, but there was a tremor in it, like she was holding something back. She lowered the flashlight slightly, and I caught a flicker of hesitation in her gaze. "You're Elena Harper, aren't you?" I froze. How did she know my name? "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'll leave. Just don't arrest me. Please." She didn't move, didn't reach for her cuffs. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, as if checking for something or someone outside. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm not going to arrest you, but I need your help." My hands dropped an inch, confusion replacing fear. "Help? You're the cop. I'm the one breaking and entering." Maya's jaw tightened and she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of her cologne. "This isn't about that. This house. It's not what you think. And neither am I." Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us two strangers caught in a moment that felt like it could unravel everything. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice steadier now, curiosity edging out panic. She hesitated, then gestured toward the staircase. "Come with me. I'll show you. But you have to trust me." "Trust a cop?" Every instinct screamed to run, but something in her eyes, vulnerability maybe or desperation, held me in place. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Maya led me upstairs, her steps deliberate, her hand hovering near her holster. The second floor was a maze of closed doors, and she stopped at one with a faint light seeping underneath. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "What I'm about to show you changes everything. You in." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I'd come here for a quick score, not whatever this was. But the way she looked at me like I was her lifeline made it impossible to walk away. "I'm in," I said, my voice barely audible. She pushed the door open, revealing a small room cluttered with files, photographs, and a corkboard pinned with maps and names. It looked like a detective's war room, not a suburban bedroom. My eyes landed on a photo taped to the board, a grainy image of a woman who looked eerily like Maya, but younger, smiling in a way Maya wasn't. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing. Maya's face tightened and she turned away, her voice barely above a whisper. "My sister. She disappeared 2 years ago. This house. It's the last place she was seen." My breath caught. This wasn't just a break-in anymore. I'd stumbled into something bigger, something personal. And Maya, this tough-as-nails cop, was trusting Maya, nobody. A thief with her secret. "Why me?" I asked, my voice soft. "Why trust a stranger?" She met my gaze, and for the first time I saw the weight she carried. Because you're here. Because you're not one of them. And because I'm running out of time. I didn't know who they were, but the urgency in her voice sent a chill down my spine. I glanced at the corkboard again, at the web of connections I couldn't yet unravel. Okay, I said, my resolve hardening. Tell me everything. Maya exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. It started 2 years ago when my sister Lila got involved with the wrong people. She was a journalist always chasing the next big story. She was working on something here in this house when she vanished. The Policewoman-owned department wrote it off as a runaway case. But I know better. She pointed to a map on the board, marked with red pins. This house belongs to a man named Victor Grayson. He's connected politicians, cops, you name it. Lila thought he was hiding something big. I've been investigating off the books, but I can't do it alone. Not anymore. I studied the board, my mind spinning. Victor Grayson. The name sounded familiar, like something from a news headline I'd skimmed at the diner. So what do you need me for? Maya's eyes softened just for a moment. You're good at getting into places you shouldn't. I need someone who can move under the radar. Someone who isn't afraid to break a few rules. I can't be seen digging too deep. Not without risking my badge or worse. I laughed, a dry, nervous sound. You want me to be your criminal sidekick? Something like that, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. It was the first time I'd seen her soften, and it did something to my chest, something I wasn't ready to name. We spent the next hour combing through Lila's files. Maya explained how she'd been sneaking into this house for months, piecing together clues. The more she talked, the more I saw the cracks in her armor, the sleepless nights, the guilt, the fear she'd never find her sister. I recognized that kind of pain. It was the same ache I carried for my own sister, wasting away in a hospital bed. As dawn crept closer, Maya paused, her hand brushing mine as she handed me a photo of Lila. The touch was brief, electric, and neither of us acknowledged it. But it lingered like a spark waiting to catch. We need to move fast, Maya said, breaking the silence. Grayson's people are watching this place. If they find out I'm here. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. The danger was real, and now I was part of it. I looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about her. Let's do this, I said, my voice steady. Whatever it takes. Maya nodded, and in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The morning light barely touched the room, filtered through heavy curtains that smelled of mildew. Maya and I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by Lila's scattered notes, each one a piece of a puzzle that felt too big to solve. My fingers traced the edges of a yellowed photograph, Lila's face staring back, her smile hauntingly alive. Maya's voice was low, urgent, as she pointed to a list of names scrawled in Lila's handwriting. These are Grayson's associates, local politicians, a couple of cops, even a judge. Lila thought they were part of a network, something tied to money laundering or worse. She was close to cracking it when she disappeared. I glanced at her, noting the shadows under her eyes. She hadn't slept, hadn't stopped moving since I'd agreed to help. You think Grayson's people took her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Maya's jaw clenched. I know they did. The department shut down her case too fast, like someone wanted it buried. I've been trying to find proof, but every lead goes cold. That's why I need you, Elena. You're not on their radar. The weight of her trust settled over me. Heavy and unfamiliar. I wasn't used to being needed, not like this. My life had been a series of quick exits, dodging foster parents, landlords, anyone who got too close. But Maya's faith in Meher quiet, desperate hope made me want to be more than a shadow slipping through the cracks. We spent the day hidden in the house, sifting through Lila's files. Each note was a glimpse into her world. A receipt from a diner near D.C., a cryptic email about a meeting at the Ridge, a photo of Grayson shaking hands with a man in a suit, their smiles too polished to be genuine. I started to see what Maya saw, a web of secrets, with Grayson at its center. Around noon we heard a car engine outside. Maya's hand shot to her gun, her body tensing. Stay low, she whispered, peering through a gap in the curtains. A black SUV idled across the street, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. My pulse spiked, but Maya's calm focus steadied me. Grayson's people? I asked, crouching beside her. Maybe, she said, her eyes scanning the street. They've been watching this place on and off. They know someone's been poking around. The SUV lingered for a few agonizing minutes before pulling away. Maya exhaled, but her hand stayed near her holster. We can't stay here much longer, she said. If they catch us, it's over. Then let's move, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. What's the next step? Maya pulled a folded map from the pile, spreading it across the floor. Red circles marked locations around Virginia warehouses, offices, a secluded cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Lila mentioned the ridge in her notes. I think it's where she was headed before she vanished. If we can get there, we might find something. The idea of trekking into the mountains with a cop I barely knew should have scared me. Instead, it felt like the only thing that made sense. Let's do it, I said, meeting her gaze. Her eyes softened just for a second, and I felt that spark again, the one I was trying to ignore. We packed light, stuffing Lila's keynotes into a backpack. Maya swapped her uniform for civilian clothes, a black sweater, and jeans that made her look less like a cop, and more like someone I could have met in a different life. As we slipped out the back door, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. I glanced at her, catching the way her hair fell loose around her face, and my chest tightened. The drive to the Blue Ridge Mountains was quiet, the hum of Maya's unmarked car the only sound between us. I stared out the window, watching suburbs give way to rolling hills. My mind kept drifting to her quiet strength, the way her hands gripped the wheel, the way she trusted me despite everything. You don't talk much about yourself, I said, breaking the silence. She glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. Not much to tell. Cop life doesn't leave room for much else. I didn't buy it. Come on. You're risking everything for this. There's gotta be more to you than the badge. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. You're one to talk, Harper. What's your deal? Breaking into houses for fun? I laughed, the sound surprising me. Survival, mostly. My sister Karosh sick. Cancer. I've been trying to keep her afloat, but it's not enough. Maya's expression softened, and for a moment, she wasn't the tough cop anymore. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Lila. She was my anchor. Losing her, it's like losing half of myself. I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. We were both carrying ghosts, both fighting battles no one else could see. Maybe that's why I felt so drawn to her, why I couldn't walk away. By dusk, we reached the cabin marked on Lila's map. It was a small, weathered structure tucked into the mountainside, surrounded by pines. The air was sharp, smelling of earth and resin. Maya parked a quarter-mile away, and we approached on foot, moving silently through the trees. The cabin was dark, but a faint glow flickered inside. Maya signaled for me to stay back as she crept closer, her gun drawn. My heart pounded, but I followed, keeping low. Through a cracked window, we saw a man mid-40s, broad-shouldered, with a scar above his eyebrow, rifling through papers on a desk. That's one of Grayson's guys, Maya whispered, her breath warm against my ear. We need to get in there. I nodded, my mind racing. Breaking into houses was my thing, but this was different. This was real. Still, I found a loose window pane and pried it open, my hand steady despite the adrenaline. We slipped inside, moving like shadows. The man didn't hear us until it was too late. Maya had him pinned against the wall, her gun at his chest, before he could react. Where's Lila? She demanded, her voice like steel. He smirked, unfazed. You're in over your head, Torres. Walk away while you still can. Maya's grip tightened, but I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I felt. This wasn't just about Lila anymore. It was about us, about what we'd stumbled into. And as the man's smirk widened, I knew we were running out of time. The cabin smelled of damp wood and cigarette smoke, the air thick with tension. Maya's gun pressed against the man's chest, her eyes blazing with a mix of fury and desperation. I stood behind her, my heart slamming against my ribs, ready to bolt if this went south. Talk, Maya growled, her voice low but lethal. Where's my sister? The man Grayson's enforcer, Maya had called him, chuckled, his scar twisting with emotion. You think you can scare me, Torres? You're playing a game you don't understand. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the desk he'd been rummaging through. Papers were scattered across it, along with a burner phone and a small black notebook. I edged closer, keeping one eye on the man. If we were going to get answers, that notebook might be our best shot. Maya pressed the gun harder against him. I'm not asking again. Where's Lila? He sneered, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. You're too late. She's gone. And if you keep digging, you'll join her. I saw Maya's hand tremble just for a second and my stomach twisted. I couldn't let her lose it, not now. I grabbed the notebook from the desk and flipped it open, scanning the pages. Names, dates, addresses, some local, some as far as DC. One entry caught my eye. Lila Torres. Warehouse 17, Port of Norfolk. October 15, 23. Maya, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Look at this. She glanced over, her eyes widening as she read the entry. October 15, 2023, 2 years ago, the night Lila disappeared. The man's smirk faltered, and I knew we'd hit something big. Warehouse 17, Maya said, her voice steady now. What's there? What did you do to her? The man laughed, but it was forced. You'll find nothing but trouble there, Torres. Walk away. Maya's jaw tightened, and before I could stop her, she slammed the butt of her gun against his temple. He crumpled to the floor out cold. I stared at her, shocked. Jesus, Maya. We don't have time, she said, holstering her gun. We need to get to that warehouse. Now. I nodded, pocketing the notebook. We tied the man's hands with some rope from the cabin and left him there, knowing he'd be out for a while. As we slipped back into the night, the weight of what we'd found settled over us. Warehouse 17 wasn't just a lead, it was a ticking clock. The drive to Norfolk was a blur, the highway stretching endlessly under the stars. Maya was silent, her hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. I wanted to say something to ease the storm in her eyes, but words felt useless. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing hers on the gearshift. She didn't pull away. You okay? I asked softly. She shook her head, her voice barely audible. I've been chasing this for 2 years, Elena. What if I'm too late? You're not, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. We're going to find her. Together. She glanced at me, her eyes searching mine, and for a moment, the air between us felt alive, charged with something neither of us could name. Her hand turned, fingers lacing briefly with mine before she pulled back, focusing on the road. The port of Norfolk was a maze of shipping containers and cranes, the air thick with salt and diesel. Warehouse 17 loomed at the edge of the docks, a rusted metal giant under flickering floodlights. We parked a block away and approached on foot, sticking to the shadows. My heart pounded, but Maya's steady presence kept me grounded. The warehouse door was unlocked, a bad sign. Inside it was cavernous, filled with crates and machinery that cast eerie shadows. We moved silently, Maya's gun drawn, my eyes scanning for any sign of Lila. The air was heavy, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Then we heard Ida faint tapping, rhythmic, coming from the back. Maya froze, her eyes locking onto mine. That's her, she whispered, her voice thick with hope and fear. It has to be. We followed the sound, weaving through stacks of crates until we reached a locked metal door. The tapping was louder now, desperate. Maya pulled a lockpick from her pocket, ironic, given how we'd met, and worked the lock with steady hands. I held my breath, praying we weren't walking into a trap. The door swung open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. A woman sat bound to a chair, her head bowed, her dark hair matted with sweat. Lila. She was alive, but barely, her clothes torn, her face bruised, her eyes hollow but fierce. Maya, she croaked, her voice breaking. Maya dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she cut Lila's bonds. I'm here, she whispered, pulling her sister into a fierce embrace. I'm here. I stood back, my chest tight with relief and something else, pride, maybe, or awe at Maya's strength. But the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps outside. Heavy, deliberate, more than one pair. Maya, I hissed, my eyes darting to the door. We've got company. She helped Lila to her feet, her face hardening. We need to move. Now. Lila was weak, leaning heavily on Maya as we slipped back into the warehouse. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by low voices. Grayson's men, no doubt. We ducked behind a crate, my pulse racing as I caught Maya's eye. She nodded, her hand squeezing mine briefly, A silent promise that we'd get through this. We moved toward the exit, Lila's weight slowing us down. The voices were closer now, flashlights cutting through the dark. I spotted a side door, half hidden behind a stack of pallets. There, I whispered, pointing. We made it to the door just as a beam of light swept over us. Stop! A man shouted, his voice echoing in the vast space. Maya shoved Lila and me through the door, slamming it shut behind us. We ran, the cold night air hitting us like a slap as we sprinted toward the car. We piled in, Maya gunning the engine as headlights flared behind us. The chase was on, and as the car sped through the empty streets, I realized how deep we were in. This wasn't just about Lila Anna Marie, it was about exposing Grayson, about justice, about the fragile bond growing between me and Maya. And as the lights of Norfolk faded in the rearview, I knew we were far from done. The car roared through the night, tires screeching as Maya took a sharp turn onto a back road. Lila slumped in the back seat, her breathing shallow but steady, her hand clutching Maya's jacket like a lifeline. I glanced at the side mirror, my stomach twisting as the headlights behind us grew closer. They're gaining, I said, my voice tight. Maya's eyes stayed on the road, her jaw set. Hold on. She floored the gas, the car lurching forward as we sped through the Virginia countryside. The headlights faded slightly, but they didn't disappear. Whoever was chasing us wasn't giving up. I turned to Lila, her face pale in the dim light. You okay? I asked. She nodded weakly, her voice hoarse. Thank you for finding me. I managed a small smile, but my mind was racing. We'd gotten Lila out, but we were far from safe. Grayson's men knew we were onto them, and they wouldn't stop until we were silenced. Maya took another turn, the car skidding onto a dirt road lined with pines. The headlights vanished, and for a moment I thought we'd lost them. But Maya didn't slow down. We need a plan, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. We can't go back to my place, and the station's out of the question. Too many of Grayson's people. What about my apartment? I offered, though the thought of bringing this mess to my doorstep made my skin crawl. Maya shook her head. Too risky. They'll be looking for you now, too. I swallowed hard, realizing how much my life had changed in a single night. So what do we do? She glanced at me, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment. There's a safe house, an old cabin my family used to own. It's off the grid, about an hour from here. We can lay low, figure out our next move. I nodded, trusting her instincts. Lila coughed in the back seat, and Maya's eyes flicked to the rear view, worry etched into her face. Hang in there, Lila, she said softly. We're almost safe. The safe house was a small log cabin nestled in a clearing, surrounded by dense forest. It was run down but sturdy, with a single room, a wood stove, and a cot in the corner. We got Lila inside, settling her on the cot with a blanket. She was exhausted, her eyes fluttering shut as soon as she lay down. Maya and I sat at a rickety table, the notebook from the warehouse open between us. The pages were a gold dates, locations, transactions, all pointing to Grayson's operation. But it wasn't enough. We needed hard evidence, something that could bring him down without getting us killed. We need to go public, Maya said, her voice low. Lila's notes mention a reporter she trusted, someone at the Washington Post. If we can get this to them, they might be able to break the story. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Grayson's got cops, politicians, how do we know this reporter isn't one of his? We don't, Maya admitted, her eyes meeting mine. But we have to try. For Lila. Her hand rested on the table, inches from mine. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap, but the weight of everything Lila, Grayson, the chase kept me still. Instead, I focused on the notebook, flipping to a page with a list of bank accounts. These could be the key, I said. If we can trace the money, we can prove Grayson's dirty. Maya's lips curved into a small smile. You're good at this, you know. Maybe you should have been a cop. I laughed, the sound easing the tension. Me? I'd make a terrible cop. Too many rules. Her smile widened, and for a moment the world felt lighter. Rules aren't so bad, she said softly. They keep things steady. Our eyes locked, and the air between us shifted, warm and heavy. I felt the pull again, that spark that had been there since the night we met. But before I could say anything, Lila stirred, her voice weak. Maya, you need to know something. We turned to her, and she struggled to sit up, her eyes haunted. Grayson. He's not just running money. It's bigger. Drugs, trafficking people. I saw things. In that warehouse. Maya's face paled, and she knelt beside Lila, taking her hand. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you involved, Lila whispered. I thought I could handle it. But they found out I was onto them. My chest tightened as I listened. Lila had been fighting the same fight Maya was now, alone and outmatched. I looked at Maya, saw the guilt and resolve in her eyes, and knew I was all in. Not just for Lila but for her. We spent the night planning, poring over the notebook for anything that could tie Grayson to the warehouse. By dawn we had a lead named Daniel Carver, a customs officer who'd signed off on shipments linked to Grayson's network. If we could get to him, we might have enough to go public. But as the sun rose, so did the danger. A car engine rumbled in the distance, faint but unmistakable. Maya's head snapped up, her hand going to her gun. They found us, she said, her voice grim. I grabbed the notebook, stuffing it into my bag as Maya helped Lila to her feet. We slipped out the back, moving into the forest just as a black SUV pulled into the clearing. My heart pounded, but Maya's hand found mine, her grip steady. Stay with me, she whispered, her eyes fierce. We're not done yet. We ran, branches snapping under our feet, the sound of pursuit close behind. The forest was dense, but it wouldn't hide us forever. As we ducked behind a fallen log, Maya turned to me, her face inches from mine. If we don't make it, she said, her voice low, I need you to know. I'm glad it was you. My breath caught, and before I could think, I leaned in, my lips brushing hers. It was brief, desperate, but it felt like everything. She pulled back, her eyes wide, then nodded, a silent promise to keep going. We moved again, Lila between us, the sound of Grayson's men closing in. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time I wasn't running alone. The forest was a blur of green and shadow, our breaths ragged as we pushed through the underbrush. Lila stumbled, her strength fading, but Maya and I held her up, our hands locked together like a lifeline. The men chasing us were close, too close, their shouts cutting through the morning air. We reached a small clearing, a stream glinting under the rising sun. Maya paused, her eyes scanning the terrain. We can't outrun them, she said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. We need to make a stand. I nodded, my mind racing. I wasn't a fighter, but I'd spent my life surviving. This was it, I'd go down swinging. We helped Lila behind a boulder, her breathing shallow but determined. Stay here, Maya told her, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. She turned to me, her eyes fierce but soft. You don't have to do this, Elena. You can run. I shook my head, my heart pounding. I'm not leaving you. Her lips curved into a small, grateful smile, and for a moment the world was just us. Then the crack of a branch snapped us back to reality. Maya drew her gun, and I grabbed a heavy stick from the ground, not much, but better than nothing. 3 men emerged from the trees, their faces hard, their hands armed. The one in the center scarred. The same man from the cabin smirked. You're out of moves, Torres. Maya stepped forward, her gun trained on him. Drop your weapons. Now. He laughed, raising his own gun. You're alone and we're not. Stand down. But we weren't alone. I saw it before Maya died, a glint of metal in the trees. Another figure moving silently. My heart leapt. Maya, behind you. I shouted, swinging my stick at the nearest man as he lunged. The clearing erupted into chaos. Maya fired, her shot grazing the scarred man's shoulder. He cursed, stumbling back as I tackled the second man, my stick connecting with his knee. The third charged Maya, but she was faster, disarming him with a swift kick. The figure in the trees, a woman, maybe a hiker or a local, shouted, her voice sharp. I've called the cops. The men hesitated, and that was our chance. Maya grabbed my arm, pulling me toward Lila. We lifted her, half running, half stumbling toward the stream. The men shouted behind us, but the sound of sirens in the distance made them falter. They vanished into the forest, leaving us gasping in the clearing. The hiker, a middle-aged woman with a phone in hand, approached cautiously. You okay? She asked. Maya nodded, still catching her breath. Thank you. You saved us. The woman shrugged, eyeing us warily. Looked like you needed help. The sirens grew louder and soon state police swarmed the area. Maya flashed her badge, explaining just enough to keep us out of cuffs. Lila was taken to a hospital, her condition stable but critical. As the adrenaline faded, I felt the weight of the past few days crash over me. Maya and I sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, blankets draped over our shoulders. The notebook was safe, handed off to a trusted detective Maya knew wasn't in Grayson's pocket. The reporter Lila had mentioned was already digging into the story, and with the evidence we'd found, Grayson's empire was starting to crumble. "You did good, Harper," Maya said, her voice soft. She bumped her shoulder against mine, a small, intimate gesture that made my chest ache. "So did you," I said, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were tired but warm, and I saw something new in them, hope, maybe, or something deeper. We didn't talk about the kiss, not yet. There'd be time for that later, when the dust settled, when Lila was safe, when we weren't running for our lives. But as we sat there, the morning sun warming our faces, I felt a quiet certainty. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about building something real. Lila recovered slowly, her story filling in the gaps. She'd been held in the warehouse, a pawn in Grayson's game to keep his secrets buried. But her notes, her courage, had set the truth free. The Washington Post ran the story a week later, exposing Grayson's network. Arrests followed one after another, as his empire unraveled. Maya and I kept in touch, our late-night calls turning into something more. She'd laugh at my diner stories, and I'd tease her about her terrible coffee. One night she showed up at my apartment, no uniform, just her and that spark in her eyes. "You still breaking into houses?" she asked, leaning against my doorframe. "Only if you're there to catch me," I shot back, grinning. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. "I'm not going anywhere, Elena." And as she kissed me, soft and sure, I knew she meant it. We'd started as strangers in a house that wasn't ours, bound by secrets and danger. But somewhere along the way, we'd found something worth fighting for each other. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Grayson's reach was long, and the scars we carried, Lila's, Maya's, mine, would take time to heal. But together we were unstoppable. And in a world that tried to break us, that was enough. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.